All right, day 505 of going live. Today, what we're doing is we're looking at properties that are coming onto the market and adding to our list of comparable sold properties. Okay. Now, just so you see what we're filtered on, I'm on Redfin and I'm looking at properties that are on the market, and they've been on the market. These are 4-bedroom plus single family homes, and these properties have been on the market for less than 7 days. And just so you're aware of where I'm looking in this area called Center Point. And if you all are following our podcast, you might want to check out the podcast that did with Daisy Sebastian, which talks about some of the top markets in Alabama, which is why I'm looking in this area, right? She mentioned that Center Point is a very high demand area. Folks with, especially families with kids, they want to be in a little bit more quiet area. They don't want to travel too far to go shopping. So that's why I'm looking at Center Point. And just for those that have not seen it, check out the latest podcast I did with Amar. She shared a great story about how she got into affordable housing development, how she became a development associate. And sometimes that's just a career path that you don't hear much about, but it's a career path that's definitely available to you. And it's something that, hey, even if you want to make a difference in affordable housing, you don't have to necessarily just be a Section 8 single family investor. There's so many other people, so many other career paths that you can follow to make a difference. All right, so let's go back to our live. So today we'll look at this property that popped up. This 513 Camellia Road, Birmingham, Alabama, 35215. Now look at this property. This one's blurry. I don't know why, but the kitchen looks like it's in pretty good shape. This bedroom looks like it's in pretty good shape. I would say it's relatively turnkey. I mean, that's a above average bathroom right there. Yeah, looks like this is a finished basement as well right here. Okay, so this home looks pretty good for the most part. It's been listed for $219,000. So to me, this in my head is a ceiling type of property because it's great condition, it's rent ready, 2244 square feet. So it's being listed for roughly around $90 per square foot. So the thing I want to pay attention to is, right, again, if you've been following what we're doing, we've been looking at properties that have been sold in the last 12 months. Then we start looking at properties that were sold in the last 3 months, just so we can get a better pulse of the market. Then we start looking at properties that are coming onto the market most recently. And the reason we're doing that is because, well, if you understand a BRRRR strategy, right, and you remember what it stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Now, let's use an example, right? Let's use an example to explain why that strategy is so popular. Now, if you bought a property, let's just use round numbers here, for $30,000, and you buy a property that is worth $30,000 and you spend $40,000 renovating that property. So now you're all in at $70,000. Well, if you're able to make that property worth $100,000, so you spent 70, right? 30 to buy it, 40 to rehab it, so you're all in 70, but now you're able to make it worth 100. You just create $30,000 of equity. So now you can go get a debt service coverage ratio loan and pull back out 70% of the home's value pretty easily. So you can get back out 70 grand. But that's all the capital you initially invested, right? Assuming closing costs, everything's included. Then what you can do is use the same 70 grand and put it over towards the next property and do it over and over and over again. That is the beauty of that strategy, because you get to use the same pile of cash over and over again to scale your portfolio. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is well, you work a full-time job, you save up money for a 20% down payment, you buy that first property, you hope that it cash flows, and you save up money from your full-time job all over again. I'm not saying you can't be successful doing that. I'm just simply saying that it's a lot slower strategy, right? Tons of people have built one that way, but that's why the BRRRR strategy is more popular. But guess what? What does it really depend upon? It's heavily dependent upon you getting your ARV correctly. So So this property is in Kilo Springs. Let's write that one out. Kilo Springs. Daddy's gonna play with you in 5 minutes, okay? Average kitchen, above average bathrooms. No painting or floor work needed. Okay, so now we got all these notes about these properties, right? So that's what we're tracking properties that are coming onto the market now. Hi. You want to watch Daddy work? You watch Daddy work?
You're not playing this.
You were playing just now.
You're not playing me.
5 minutes.
妈快有 me.
你同媽媽玩先好嘛？Okay.
No.
All right. So now that we got all these details in here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at properties coming on the market. So we did. And again, the reason why you want to track properties that are coming on the market today is so that you can stay on top of what's on the market. So if you need a little bit more of a buffer, right? More of a hedge of needing a bigger space between typically what's you think you can refinance 70%. So if you need to refinance more than, if you want to be on, let's say 60% of the home's value, that's probably going to be dependent on what's happening in the market. So if you see what's happening in the market, right? We were at a high of 4.8, went down to like 3.6, and it went back to a 4.8. This is the interest rate of the 10-year treasury yield, because the 30-year mortgage interest rate is heavily affected by the interest rate on the 10-year yield and also the spread between the 10-year yield and the 30-year mortgage interest rates. Historically, that spread has been about 1.5 to 2% from the 10-year yield to the 30-year mortgage interest rates. But we've seen as high as 3%. That's when we saw interest rates in the 8s. And that's when you really didn't see any activity in the housing market. So if you were to refinance today, right, you might be looking at properties that were sold in September and October when interest rates were at their lowest. So your payments were lower, which drives up your affordability and which drives up the prices that you're willing to pay for properties. So you might get a higher valuation, so that allows you to pull back out more capital. On the other scenario, if you were to say, let's say you buy a property today and you're refinancing properties in 3 to 6 months from now, you might be looking at properties today when interest rates are at their highest, so your monthly payment is higher. So that's going to make your affordability go down and put downwards pressure on the prices of the properties that are sold. That's the difference, right? That's how big this swing really means and how it affects your ability to pull back out as much capital as possible with the BRRRR strategy. Okay. All right. So next thing I want to talk to you about is, now that we got all these details in here, now we wrote it all down. Now I know that, hey, the next time I see a 3-bedroom property, maybe it's a 3.2, 2,000 square feet, I can look at this property and pay close attention to, hey, what did this property sell for in Kilo Springs? And if I'm looking to renovate my property, maybe I'm not going to be able to exceed $90 per square foot, no matter how big the home is. And that's something that you have to pay really, really close attention to, because the quality of finish matters, but then it also depends on where your comparable sold properties are. And again, we do this because, hey, what happens if the appraiser that your lender hires gives you a lower valuation than you were looking for? Well, what are you going to put forward as evidence to support the valuation that you're looking for? You have to give sold properties, comparable properties to whatever property that you're renovating, and a finished product of that renovation to that lender so that they can see whether or not they can give you the same valuation you're looking for, because you might have to appeal it. All right, so this is very, very important. And that's why I really want to explain why we're tracking properties on the market today based on what's happening in the interest rates, specifically around the 10-year treasury yield. Okay, now if I were to just analyze this deal, right, as is, let's go through it. Right, this property, 513 Camellia, is listed for $219,000. My renovation on this property, if I go to my rehab calculator, I just set aside $1,500 for the roof, just in case there's any replacements, $5 for some landscaping, I don't need to paint anything. Maybe I'll just say 2249 times 0.1. So I'm assuming I need to paint 10% of the home, just doing some touch-up paint. I got 2 toilets that I'm going to replace with high pressure flush toilets in row 132. So my total rehab on this property is $4,300, right, with some contingencies. Now for my rent, if I go to affordablehousing.com, I go to the owner section, and then I go to the market rent estimator. I'm going to put in the address and the 4-bedroom count. And it says right here that the average rent for 25 units within a 1.69 mile radius is $1,487. So I'm going to do $1,450 right here. And that'll be my rent. Just be conservative. Then I'm going to get my taxes and my insurance. Obviously, you should double check with your county assessor records before you close. But it says my taxes is $42. Great. And my home insurance is $170. It's a little high, but $170. And I'm multiply that by 1.2. I'm multiplying by 1.2 because I see that that 170 is likely for a primary residence property. And if you use it as an investment property, I'm going to assume that the insurance company is going to view it as a riskier asset. So that's why I'm multiplying by 1.2 to add a 20% premium. That equals 204. Then for my other expenses, I'm setting aside 10% of my rents every single month for maintenance. Then I got 10% of my expenses set aside for property management expenses. Then I got 5% for my vacancy expenses. So with all this stuff now, what I'm going to have to do is for 25% down on this property, my down payment is going to equals to my B4 times my F19, my down payment percentage. So that's in E19, that'll give me a down payment of 54.75K. Zero this assignment fee because that was for yesterday. At 2% for closing costs, $4,300 for renovations that we calculated earlier. So my financing amount in K6 is going to be equals to my B4, which is my asking price, minus my down payment percentage in E19. So I'll be financing $164,000 roughly, using a 7.5% interest rate as my estimate. This property, if I rent it out as a 4-bedroom for $1,450, I will cash flow negative $307. I'll lose $307 a month. That's a negative 5.8% return, assuming I bought this property for $219,000 with a $4,300 rehab, 25% down, 7.5% interest rate. Now, let's say your target return was 10%, right? You might have to buy this property for $105,000 for this to reach your target. All right, see what happened there? 107. There you go. 7,500. Great. This is how I modify my inputs to achieve the target return I'm looking for. Now, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm not saying that 10% is a magical number. You have to decide what that number is for you, for your target criteria, for you to determine what's the deal for you. So if it's 10%, I would have to buy this property, assuming everything else stays constant, for $107,500, because now I can cash for $278 a month. And that's a 10% return, assuming everything else stays constant with a $4,300 rehab, 25% down, and 7.5% interest rate. Now, what if in K7 my interest rates drop, like I've been telling you, right? Follow the 10-year yield, follow what's happening. What if that goes to 6%? Well, see how much the cash and cash return numbers jump. So now you might be willing to say, hey, maybe I can pay $120,000. So from the last scenario, right, I jumped up $12,500, assuming everything else stays constant, but a 25% down, but the interest rate now 6%, because now I can cash flow $302 a month, and that's still a 9.8%, 9.9% return. That rounds up to 10. And now you understand why you have to go through all these scenarios so that you can figure out, hey, what is the deal for you, right? Let's say you bought this property with a contingency, right? And you realize that, oh, the roof needed to be completely replaced after I looked at it. So your rehab tripled. See what happened after your rehab tripled in B6? Your cash and cash return number just went down to 8%. So now you might have to go back down to $110,000 because that's still 9.8% return. But because your rehab tripled to $13,000 roughly. You got to go down to 110 grand now. And that's how you take emotions out of the deal, right? This is how you figure out why does a certain number or set of terms work for you. It's going to be dependent on your rents, expenses, revenue, like your rent projections, the purchase price, and the interest rates, and more. So hopefully this was helpful, everybody. We talked today about one, how to add your properties to your comparable sales list so that you can figure out what's the deal for you and figure out for yourself what the ARV, the active repair value, is going to be, because that's going to be very crucial for your BRRRR strategy. Then we looked at the deal and we looked at it together and we analyzed all the properties together. Great. Then my hope is that you copy my homework today, right? Analyze the same deal analyzed today, right? This property just came on the market 29 hours ago. And just copy my homework. Look at the same property looked at today using the same spreadsheet. You guys want to copy the spreadsheet? Go to affordablehousing.io, go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, plug in your name, email, your phone number. It's the fastest way you get to copy the spreadsheet. And then put it on your own YouTube channel. Because at some point, someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you say, hey, I know this is a deal because I've been looking at properties for the past 505 days. Might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Saturday. Spend some quality time with your family and friends today. That's what life is all about. I'll see y'all tomorrow for day